Welcome back. This is BL Stories for You. I'm an indie author dedicated to original BL storytelling. From high school drama to fantasy worlds, everything you hear is written by me. I'm so glad you're here for this journey. Let's begin.
The royal carriage soon rolled through the massive palace gates of Luminar. Servants lined both sides of the entrance, bowing respectfully as the carriage came to a stop. Nello stepped down first before offering his hand to Aarhiya. "Careful." Aarhiya nodded absent-mindedly and climbed out, but his mind was clearly somewhere else. Even as palace servants greeted him, he barely heard their voices. The image of Kaenar standing on that street refused to leave his thoughts. His eyes. The way he had looked back at him. The confusion in his expression. It played over and over again in Aarhiya's mind. Nello noticed immediately. He quietly dismissed the servants. "We'll take it from here." The servants bowed and left, giving the two of them some privacy. The moment they entered Aarhiya's private chambers, Aarhiya let out a long breath and slowly sat down on the edge of his bed. For a while, he simply stared at the floor. Nello stood nearby, waiting patiently. Finally, Aarhiya broke the silence. "I still can't believe it." Aarhiya slowly looked up at him. "You were right. Kaenar is here in Luminar. I really saw him. He wasn't a dream. He wasn't one of my visions. He was standing right there." A small, bittersweet smile appeared on his face. But his smile slowly faded. "I've never been so confused in my life." Nello quietly pulled over a chair and sat opposite him. "What are you confused about?" Aarhiya laughed helplessly. "Everything." He rubbed both hands over his face. "When our eyes met, my heart wanted to jump out of this carriage. I wanted to run to him." His voice cracked. "I wanted to call his name. I wanted to tell him." He swallowed hard. "That I never abandoned him." His shoulders slumped. "But I couldn't." He buried his face in his hands. "I couldn't move." Nello listened quietly. Aarhiya lowered his hands again, his eyes shining with unshed tears. He looked at me. As though I was a complete stranger. The words hurt him just to say. "He doesn't recognize me." He let out a shaky laugh. "Of course he doesn't. Why would he? The person he knew." He looked down. Was Sanraya. He never knew that Sanraya was actually me. His voice became softer. "So if I suddenly run to him now, what would he think?" "He'd think I've gone mad." Aarhiya suddenly covered his face again. "Oh, Nello." He groaned dramatically. "I wanted to run into his arms so badly. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to tell him how much I missed him. He looked utterly miserable. But I couldn't." He let out a frustrated sigh. It was torture. "I imagined this moment so many times. But now that it's actually happened." He sighed deeply. "I know. But it's difficult." Nello smiled. "I know it is." He grabbed Aarhiya's hand. "But remember who you are." Aarhiya frowned slightly. "You're the crown prince of Luminar. The future king. And the kingdom's oracle." He squeezed Aarhiya's shoulder lightly. "You can't allow your emotions to completely overwhelm you. You need to think carefully. Kaenar has finally arrived in Luminar. That's good news. Now." He smiled encouragingly. "The question is, what's your next move?" Aarhiya slowly fell into thought. For the first time since seeing Kaenar, he stopped focusing on the shock and began thinking ahead. Nello was right. Running blindly toward him wouldn't solve anything. There had to be a better way. Just then, a gentle knock sounded at the door. Knock, knock. Both men looked over. The opening meeting ceremony requested by His Majesty has already begun. She smiled politely. The king asked me to escort you there immediately. Aarhiya blinked. So soon? Yes, Your Highness. The royal family, ministers, and the visiting delegations have already begun gathering. Aarhiya slowly stood. He then looked at the maid with a calm smile. Tell father I'll be there shortly. Yes, Your Highness. The maid bowed once more before quietly leaving. After the door closed, Nello smiled proudly. That's better. Aarhiya gave a small smile in return. He glanced briefly toward the palace window. Somewhere out there. Kaenar was also in Luminar. For the first time in so long, they were breathing the same air, walking the same streets. And somehow, Aarhiya hoped that Kaenar would recognize him. Meanwhile, inside the magnificent Grand Hall of Luminar Palace, preparations for the official opening ceremony of the Cross Kingdom Festival were already underway. The hall itself was breathtaking. Towering white crystal pillars stretched toward the ceiling, each wrapped in golden vines that shimmered with magic. Enormous chandeliers crafted from floating crystal shards bathed the room in warm light, while colorful banners representing every magical kingdom fluttered gently overhead. Rows of ministers, generals, scholars, and nobles had already taken their seats. A low murmur of conversation filled the hall. Everyone knew this year's festival was going to be unlike any before it. Every kingdom had sent its finest representatives. Suddenly, a palace herald struck his golden staff against the marble floor. The representatives of the allied kingdoms have arrived. Instantly, the conversations died down. All eyes turned toward the enormous golden doors. With a deep rumble, the doors slowly swung open. One after another, distinguished guests entered the hall. Each delegation was more impressive than the last. Luxurious robes. Magnificent armor. Rare magical beasts. Each kingdom clearly intended to display its wealth and strength before the others. Among the first to enter was Prince Jariel of Luminar. Although he was already a member of the royal family, tradition required that every royal representative make an official entrance. He walked with quiet confidence, dressed in elegant royal robes embroidered with gold and emerald thread. Several elite palace knights followed closely behind him. The nobles respectfully bowed as he passed. Jariel acknowledged them with a polite nod before taking his assigned place among the royal representatives. Not long afterward, another herald announced loudly. Representing the kingdom of Xuanlong, warrior Jian Shen. A hush swept through the room. A tall young man entered. Unlike many of the nobles present, Jian Shen wore almost no jewelry. His presence alone commanded attention. Across his back rested an enormous spear carved from pale dragon bone. Every step he took was calm and deliberate. Behind him walked several warriors wearing cloaks made from the pelts of magical snow beasts. One of the Luminar ministers leaned toward another and whispered. So that's Jian Shen, the dragon warrior. The other minister nodded. I've heard he defeated a frost chimera before turning 20. Is it true? They say he fought it alone. Nearby nobles exchanged impressed looks. The kingdom of Xuanlong was famous throughout the magical world. Hidden among towering mountains where snow never melted, it was known as the land of eternal winter. The air there was so thin that ordinary travelers often struggled to breathe. Yet the people of Xuanlong considered those harsh conditions their greatest teacher. Their warriors trained by climbing icy cliffs with bare hands, meditating beneath frozen waterfalls, and sparring against the relentless mountain winds until both body and spirit became unbreakable. But above all, Xuanlong was renowned for one extraordinary gift. Beast taming. Legend said that ancient dragon spirits still slept beneath their sacred mountains. The descendants of Xuanlong had inherited the rare ability to communicate with powerful magical creatures. Even the fiercest beasts often bowed before their command. Jian Shen finally reached his seat. Without saying a word, he calmly folded his arms and observed everyone around him. His sharp eyes missed nothing. Moments later, the herald announced once again. Representing the kingdom of Yanjing, Grand Mage Long Mo. Another figure entered. Unlike Jian Shen's commanding warrior presence, Long Mo appeared almost scholarly. He wore flowing black robes covered in intricate golden calligraphy that shimmered whenever he moved. His long dark hair was neatly tied behind him, and hanging from his waist were dozens of scrolls sealed with glowing talismans. But what immediately caught everyone's attention was the elegant ink brush resting in his hand. It looked simple, almost ordinary. Yet countless powerful mages in the room instinctively stiffened upon seeing it. One elderly scholar quietly whispered, "That's the heavenly ink brush. I never thought I'd actually see it." Another nodded nervously. "It is said one stroke from that brush can rewrite reality itself." Long Mo smiled politely as he greeted the gathering. Unlike Jian Shen, he carried himself with gentle elegance. Yet beneath that calm smile was unmistakable confidence. The kingdom of Yanjing had always been unlike any other magical nation. Its people believed that before the world existed, everything had first been written into existence by the primordial deity. To them, words were not merely symbols. Words possessed power. Every written character carried magical energy. Every sentence could alter reality. Because of that belief, Yanjing valued scholars just as highly as warriors. Their libraries were considered sacred temples. Their scrolls were treated like priceless treasures. And their ink brushes could become weapons capable of changing the fate of kingdoms. Long Mo gently rested his brush across his arm before taking his seat. His calm eyes quietly studied the representatives gathered around him. Finally, the herald struck his staff once more. Representing the Moon Kingdom of Qingyue, Princess Feng Yu. A soft murmur swept through the hall. Everyone turned. Princess Feng Yu entered gracefully, almost seeming to glide rather than walk. She wore flowing silvery blue robes that shimmered like moonlight dancing across water. Fine silver threads embroidered throughout the fabric glowed faintly with magical energy. Her long black hair flowed freely behind her, adorned only with delicate moonstone ornaments. Unlike many royals who entered proudly, Feng Yu's movements were gentle and elegant. Yet somehow, her quiet presence commanded just as much respect. The air itself seemed calmer around her. Several lantern flames flickered softly as she passed. One young noble whispered, "She's even more beautiful than the rumors." Another quietly replied, "They say she's blessed directly by the moon spirits." Princess Feng Yu represented the mysterious kingdom of Qingyue. Unlike the icy mountains of Xuanlong or the scholarly cities of Yanjing, Qingyue lay hidden within an ancient forest where the trees possessed pale white bark and leaves that glowed softly beneath the night sky. Even during darkness, the forest shimmered with silvery light. The kingdom itself had been carved almost entirely from enormous pieces of moon-touched marble. Its magnificent palace reflected the night sky so perfectly that travelers often claimed it looked as though a second moon had descended upon the earth. The people of Qingyue lived in harmony with the moon's cycles. They were naturally more active at night than during the day. Even their royal guards wore lightweight silk robes instead of heavy armor, each thread woven with enchanted silver capable of channeling moonlight into protective magic. Princess Feng Yu herself possessed one of the kingdom's rarest gifts. She did not wield blazing fire or crushing earth. Instead, she commanded moonlight. With it, she could reveal hidden truths, weave beautiful illusions to protect her allies, soothe restless spirits, and manipulate celestial currents that few mages fully understood. As she reached her seat, the hall felt strangely peaceful. The grand hall continued to fill as more distinguished guests made their entrance. The herald struck his staff once again, representing the kingdom of Ignis. His Royal Highness, Prince Draken. The massive doors swung open. A tall, imposing young man strode confidently into the hall. Prince Draken carried himself like someone who expected the world to move out of his way. Unlike the other representatives, Draken didn't bother smiling. He simply acknowledged the room with a slight nod before taking his seat. Several nobles whispered among themselves. "That's Prince Draken. They say he has never lost a duel. I heard his fire magic can melt enchanted steel. And his temper is just as legendary." Draken ignored every whisper. His expression remained unreadable. Not long after, another announcement echoed through the hall. Lady Sanrea, daughter of Minister Sarone. Heads turned once more. Sanrea entered elegantly, a warm smile rested upon her lips, instantly capturing the attention of several young nobles. She gracefully bowed before the king's empty throne before moving toward her assigned seat. As she sat down, her eyes casually drifted across the hall. Almost immediately, they met Prince Draken's. Neither of them smiled openly. Instead, they exchanged the faintest knowing look. A secret smile. Barely noticeable. Gone almost as quickly as it appeared. To everyone else, it seemed meaningless. But both of them understood exactly what it meant. They each had their own plans for this festival. And somehow, those plans were connected. Moments later, the palace herald struck his staff 3 times. His voice echoed powerfully throughout the chamber. His Majesty, King Aurelius of Luminar. Everyone immediately rose to their feet. The enormous golden doors slowly opened. King Aurelius entered. Walking just behind him was Aarhiya. The entire hall seemed to fall silent. Many of the visiting nobles had heard stories about Luminar's crown prince. But seeing him in person was an entirely different experience. His long white hair shimmered beneath the crystal chandeliers. His blue eyes seemed almost unreal. Combined with his elegant white ceremonial robes embroidered with silver and gold, he looked almost ethereal. Several guests couldn't help whispering among themselves. "So that's Prince Aarhiya. He's even more beautiful than the rumors. I finally understand why so many kingdoms wish to marry into Luminar. I've never seen anyone like him. Even Princess Feng Yu quietly admired him." Long Mo smiled thoughtfully. Jian Shen simply folded his arms, silently observing. Prince Draken narrowed his eyes ever so slightly. Only advisor Lu Yi, walking behind the royal family, remained expressionless. King Aurelius finally reached the magnificent golden throne and sat down. Aarhiya gracefully took the seat placed slightly beneath and beside him, as tradition dictated for the crown prince. The hall gradually became quiet again. King Aurelius smiled warmly at the assembled guests. "My honored friends. It brings me great joy to welcome all of you once again to Luminar." His voice echoed confidently through the hall. "I trust the accommodations prepared by my kingdom have met your expectations." The representatives smiled politely. Princess Feng Yu inclined her head. "They have exceeded them, Your Majesty." Long Mo nodded. "The hospitality of Luminar remains unmatched." Jian Shen gave a respectful bow. "We are grateful." King Aurelius smiled with satisfaction. "I'm pleased to hear it." He raised his wine cup. "Then let us begin tonight not as rivals, but as allies." He gestured toward the waiting servants. "Please enjoy the food, the wine, and the hospitality Luminar has prepared." Immediately, dozens of beautifully dressed palace maids entered carrying golden trays filled with exquisite dishes, fragrant tea, expensive wines, and colorful desserts. Soft music began playing in the background as the atmosphere relaxed. Guests chatted, laughed, raised their cups together. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. After allowing everyone time to settle, King Aurelius rose once more. As you all know, the Cross Kingdom Festival officially begins in 2 days. He looked around the room. I sincerely hope every kingdom will compete with honor. Let this festival strengthen the friendship between our nations. His smile slowly faded. His voice became noticeably colder. However, if anyone should attempt to disturb the peace of Luminar, or bring chaos into my kingdom, his eyes swept across every representative. I care little whether that person is a prince, a princess, a noble, or a king. The hall became noticeably quieter. King Aurelius continued calmly. They will be dealt with. No one doubted his words. This was, after all, Luminar. Just then, the hall doors suddenly burst open. A palace guard stumbled inside, breathing heavily. His face had turned pale. Your Majesty. King Aurelius frowned. What is it? The guard swallowed nervously. There's. He struggled to catch his breath. There's a man outside. He claims. The guard hesitated. To be the Emperor of Umbraeth. The hall instantly exploded into whispers. What? Impossible. The Emperor of Umbraeth? How could that be? King Aurelius himself froze. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his throne. What did you say? The guard repeated himself. He claims to be Emperor Kaenar, and demands an audience with your Majesty. Silence filled the hall. King Aurelius slowly sat back. His face became unusually tense. Impossible. His thoughts raced. The barrier. No one from Umbraeth can cross it. Then another thought struck him. One he had feared since Aarhiya returned. Unless. His heartbeat quickened. No. He immediately dismissed it. It can't be. He quickly stood. An impostor. His voice became firm. It has to be. No Emperor of Umbraeth could possibly stand within Luminar. He looked toward the guards. Throw him out. Immediately. Yes, Your Majesty. Several elite palace guards rushed toward the entrance. The doors slammed shut behind them. Everyone waited. The hall fell strangely quiet. Then. Clang. The unmistakable sound of metal crashing against metal echoed from outside. A scream followed. Then another. Guests exchanged uneasy looks. What is happening? Another loud crash. Someone cried out in pain. Then. Silence. Complete silence. Even the musicians had stopped playing. Suddenly. Boom. The enormous hall doors were violently pushed open. Everyone turned. A tall figure slowly walked inside. His clothes were simple. Like an ordinary traveler. Yet. The overwhelming pressure surrounding him made the entire hall instinctively tense. In one hand. He held a palace guard by the collar. The guard's armor was shattered. Blood covered his face. Without ceremony. The stranger casually threw him onto the polished floor. The unconscious guard slid several feet before finally stopping. Behind the man stood Polar and General Gator. Both looked calm despite the dozens of soldiers surrounding them. Gasps echoed throughout the chamber. Prince Draken's eyes narrowed. Long Mo quietly adjusted his glasses. Princess Feng Yu stared with curiosity. Jian Shen's hand instinctively rested upon his spear. Sunraya's face instantly turned pale. That man. Her eyes widened. It's him. The merchant. No. The very same man she had insulted and thrown out of her home this very morning. Her heart dropped. Meanwhile, Aarhiya hadn't moved. He simply stared. His entire world seemed to disappear once again. Kaenar. He was really here. Standing only a few steps away. Closer than ever before. Aarhiya couldn't even blink. He was terrified that if he looked away, Kaenar might disappear again. Kaenar glanced around the magnificent hall before speaking. A sarcastic smile tugged at the corner of his lips. I must admit. He looked at the unconscious guards scattered outside the doorway. I'm rather disappointed. I expected a warmer welcome. King Aurelius shot to his feet. Who are you? His voice thundered through the hall. How dare you interrupt a royal ceremony? Kaenar's expression immediately turned cold. I had hoped to introduce myself peacefully. He dusted off his sleeve. But your guards seemed determined to greet me with swords instead of manners. His sharp gaze settled on the king. I must say. He smiled humorlessly. I'm disappointed. I expected far better from the ruler of the greatest kingdom in the world. Several ministers gasped. No one spoke to King Aurelius like that. Ever. Kaenar calmly cleared his throat. Then spoke in a voice every person in the hall could hear. My name is Kaenar. A brief pause followed. I am the Emperor of Umbraeth. The hall exploded into laughter. Some nobles shook their heads. Ridiculous. What nonsense. He's clearly insane. King Aurelius remained silent. Kaenar sighed. I expected as much. Without another word, he reached into his robe. Slowly, he withdrew a magnificent golden seal engraved with ancient black symbols. The room instantly fell silent. Every noble recognized it. King Aurelius's eyes widened in horror. No. He stepped down from his throne. That's. His voice trembled. The royal seal of Umbraeth. His face turned completely pale. His knees nearly gave way beneath him. It was genuine. There was absolutely no possibility of forging such an artifact. Kaenar watched his reaction with a faint smirk. So. He folded his arms. You finally recognize me. Across the hall. Senraya felt every ounce of blood drain from her face. Her hands trembled. Emperor. He's really the Emperor of Umbraeth. Images from this morning flooded back into her mind. Calling him a lowlife. Slapping him. Ordering him thrown out. Her breathing became uneven. What have I done? Across from her. Prince Draken noticed the sudden change in her expression. He frowned slightly. Interesting. He quietly studied Senraya. Why does she look terrified? King Aurelius slowly regained his composure, though the shock still lingered on his face. He stared at Kaenar for a long moment before speaking. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the tension beneath it. How? The single word echoed through the hall. Kaenar raised an eyebrow. Aurelius continued. How did you leave Umbraeth? He couldn't hide his curiosity anymore. For several decades, no one has crossed that barrier. Not even the greatest mages in the world could break its curse. His eyes narrowed. So tell me. How are you standing here? The entire hall leaned in, eager to hear the answer. Kaenar, however, simply smiled faintly. I'm afraid. He said calmly. That isn't your concern. A few ministers gasped at his bluntness. Kaenar continued without the slightest hesitation. How I crossed the barrier is Umbraeth's affair. I have no intention of discussing it. He folded his arms. I won't be staying here forever anyway. His expression became more serious. At most. I have 3 months. Once those 3 months are over, the barrier's curse will reach me. Several people exchanged shocked looks. So even crossing the barrier has a price. Someone whispered. Kaenar nodded slightly. So I don't intend to waste the little time I have. His gaze became distant. I came to Luminar for only one reason. He spoke quietly now. To bring back someone precious to me. The words hung in the air. As soon as I bring back that person, I'll leave. Without realizing it, Aarhiya lowered his head. His fingers tightened around his robes beneath the table. Someone precious. His heart ached. He knew exactly who Kaenar was talking about. Or rather, who Kaenar believed he was talking about. King Aurelius noticed the subtle change in his son's expression. His eyes lingered on Aarhiya for only a second before returning to Kaenar. His face remained unreadable. Finally, he spoke. You already know. He began carefully. That relations between Luminar and Umbraeth have never been friendly. Kaenar remained silent. Aurelius continued. Your kingdom has lived beneath darkness for many years. The curse surrounding Umbraeth has forced every kingdom to distance itself. He sighed. That is simply reality. His tone became firmer. For that reason, it would benefit both of our kingdoms if you left Luminar as soon as possible. Several ministers quietly nodded in agreement. Kaenar looked at him for a long moment. Then, he smiled. Not warmly. Almost mockingly. So, he said. That is how Luminar treats its guests. Aurelius frowned. Kaenar tilted his head. I thought. He said casually. You would at least thank me first. The king's eyebrows drew together. Thank you. Kaenar nodded. Yes. His smile widened. For saving your only son's life. The hall erupted. What? The crown prince? He saved Prince Aarhiya. Every eye immediately turned toward the prince. Aarhiya slowly lifted his head. His blue eyes met Kaenar's across the hall. For a brief moment, neither of them looked away. Kaenar continued speaking without breaking eye contact. When I arrived at the temple yesterday, I saw your son falling from the balcony. He had already been poisoned. If I hadn't caught him. He shrugged calmly. He would have died before ever reaching the ground. He finally looked back at King Aurelius. And if my companions hadn't treated the poison, your only heir would most likely be dead by now. Silence filled the hall once again. No one dared speak. King Aurelius clenched his fists. He hated admitting it. But Kaenar wasn't lying. Advisor Louis slowly stepped closer to the throne. Keeping his voice low enough that only the king could hear, he whispered. Your Majesty. We cannot send him away. Aurelius didn't respond. Louis continued quietly. He saved the crown prince. And every representative in this hall now knows it. If we chase him out after such a deed. He glanced around the room. Luminar's reputation will suffer. Our allies may see us as ungrateful. It would be politically unwise. King Aurelius closed his eyes briefly. He hated every word. Because every word was true. After a long silence, he finally looked at Kaenar. Very well. His voice remained stiff. As repayment for saving my son, I will permit you to remain in Luminar. Aurelius forced a diplomatic smile. If there is anything you desire. Gold. Land. Magical treasures. My kingdom will gladly reward you. Kaenar laughed softly. I appreciate the offer. But I have no interest in rewards. The king frowned. Kaenar folded his arms. There is only one thing I want. What is it? Aurelius asked cautiously. Kaenar's smile slowly returned. I wish to participate in the Cross-Kingdom Festival. The hall immediately buzzed with excitement. The festival? As a competitor? Kaenar nodded. I've heard so much about the talented representatives gathered here. His eyes slowly wandered around the hall. Then finally, they stopped on Senrea. She immediately stiffened. Kaenar smiled ever so slightly. I'd like to see just how impressive everyone truly is, especially the young eligible bachelors here. There was unmistakable sarcasm in his voice. Senrea instantly understood. Heat rushed to her face. She lowered her head in embarrassment, unable to meet his eyes. Kaenar had said nothing directly. Yet somehow, she felt as though everyone in the hall knew exactly how rudely she had treated him this morning. She quietly bit her lip. He's doing this on purpose. Kaenar casually continued. Oh. One more thing. King Aurelius sighed inwardly. What now? Kaenar looked completely relaxed. Every inn in your kingdom seems to be full because of the festival. My companions and I are currently staying in a very modest tavern. He glanced down at his clothes. I don't particularly mind rough conditions. He smiled. But they hardly seem appropriate for an emperor. Several nobles chuckled awkwardly. So, Kaenar concluded, I would appreciate proper accommodations. King Aurelius's eye twitched. His first instinct was immediate refusal. There isn't any. Before he could finish, Advisor Louis stepped forward. There is, Your Majesty. Aurelius slowly turned. Louis bowed respectfully. The manor beside His Royal Highness Prince Aarhiya's residence has remained vacant for several months. It is large enough to comfortably house Emperor Kaenar and his companions. The hall fell silent. King Aurelius stared at Louis. His jaw tightened. Inside, his anger flared. That manor. Right beside Aarhiya's? Absolutely not. The very thought unsettled him. Having Kaenar so close to Aarhiya. It was the last thing he wanted. But hundreds of eyes were watching him. Representatives from every allied kingdom waited for his answer. If he refused now, after publicly thanking Kaenar for saving Aarhiya, he would appear petty and dishonorable. Aurelius slowly closed his eyes. Then let out a controlled breath. Very well. His voice sounded almost forced. The manor will be prepared immediately. Kaenar inclined his head politely. My thanks, Your Majesty. Their eyes met once again. Then, almost instinctively, Kaenar looked toward Aarhiya. At the exact same moment, Aarhiya looked back at him. Neither of them spoke. Yet something unexplainable seemed to pass between them. Across the hall, Senrea thought carefully, but then a slow smile appeared on her lips. Perhaps, she thought, I can use this. Her embarrassment from the previous day quickly transformed into calculation. If Kaenar was truly the Emperor of Umbraeth, then earning his favor might still be possible. He was mistaking her for someone important to him. She would use that to her advantage. After all, the Cross-Kingdom Festival had only just begun. And every player was finally stepping onto the board. The atmosphere inside the Grand Hall slowly relaxed as the opening meeting officially came to an end. Representatives from the different kingdoms rose from their seats, exchanging polite bows and formal greetings before preparing to leave. Some discussed the competitions that would begin in 2 days. Others quietly sized up their future opponents. It was clear that although everyone wore courteous smiles, the rivalry had already begun. Kaenar walked towards the palace courtyard, calmly watching the guests disperse. Polar stood to his right while General Gator stood silently behind him, his sharp eyes scanning the room out of habit. Just then, a tall figure approached them. It was Jian Shen. The warrior from Xuanlong walked with the same calm confidence he had displayed since arriving at the palace. His heavy boots echoed softly against the polished marble floor. When he stopped before Kaenar, he folded one arm behind his back and gave a respectful nod. Emperor Kaenar. Kaenar returned the nod. Warrior Jian Shen. For a brief moment, neither man spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was the silence shared between two warriors measuring each other without needing words. Finally, Jian Shen smiled faintly. I've heard many stories about you. Kaenar raised an eyebrow. Oh. Jian Shen nodded. Even in Xuanlong, your name is well known. They say you've never lost a battle. They say you built Umbraeth into a disciplined kingdom despite the curse surrounding it. He looked Kaenar directly in the eyes. I've always wondered if those stories were exaggerated. A faint smile tugged at Kaenar's lips. And now? Jian Shen's eyes gleamed with excitement. Now I have the opportunity to find out for myself. He extended a hand. I hope we meet during the festival. It would be an honor. The words were polite. But beneath them, everyone could hear the challenge. Kaenar looked at the offered hand for a second before shaking it firmly. I'll be disappointed if we don't. Jian Shen chuckled. I thought you'd say that. He released Kaenar's hand and gave another respectful nod. Until then. I wish you good fortune. And you. Without another word, Jian Shen turned and walked away. Polar watched him disappear into the crowd. That wasn't just a greeting, was it? Kaenar smiled. No. He was inviting me to a duel. General Gator crossed his arms. And you accepted. Kaenar simply nodded. A true warrior doesn't reject challenges. Before the conversation could continue, another familiar figure passed by. Prince Draken. Unlike Jian Shen, Draken didn't stop. He simply walked past Kaenar with several armored guards following closely behind him. As he passed, he turned his head slightly. Their eyes met. The air instantly became tense. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them spoke. It lasted only a second. Then Draken looked away and continued walking as though nothing had happened. Polar frowned as he watched him leave. Your Majesty. Kaenar glanced at him. Did you notice that? That prince clearly doesn't like you. General Gator quietly nodded. He looked ready to start a fight. Kaenar merely smirked. I noticed. And? Polar asked curiously. Kaenar's smile widened ever so slightly. Nothing. If someone dislikes me without even knowing me, that's their problem. He turned away. Besides, I have a feeling we'll become acquainted soon enough. Polar exchanged a glance with General Gator. Neither of them missed the confidence in Kaenar's voice. Just then, a young palace maid approached and bowed respectfully. Your Majesty. Kaenar looked at her. His Majesty King Aurelius has ordered me to escort you to your residence. She smiled politely. If you'll please follow me. Kaenar nodded. Lead the way. The four of them left the grand hall together. As they walked through the palace corridors, Polar couldn't help but admire everything around him. I knew Luminar was wealthy. He whispered. But this is unbelievable. Golden pillars stretched toward beautifully painted ceilings. Crystal lanterns floated magically through the hallways. Elegant gardens could be seen through enormous open windows. Even General Gator looked impressed. It truly lives up to its reputation. The maid smiled proudly. We're honored you think so. They continued walking peacefully until hurried footsteps echoed behind them. Your Majesty. Kaenar stopped. Everyone turned. Sanraya came running toward them, slightly out of breath. She quickly gathered herself before offering a respectful bow. Your Majesty. Her earlier arrogance had completely disappeared. In its place was a polite, almost nervous smile. Kaenar looked at her calmly. Lady Sanraya. She forced an awkward laugh. She hesitated. I wanted to apologize. Kaenar said nothing. Sanraya lowered her eyes. About this morning. She clasped her hands together. I behaved terribly. I hope you can forgive me. Kaenar simply watched her. Seeing that he wasn't responding, she hurriedly continued. The truth is, I've been having memory problems recently. Polar blinked. General Gator raised an eyebrow. Sanraya nodded dramatically. When I saw you, I genuinely didn't recognize you. I've forgotten many things because of an illness. She sighed sadly. If I had known who you truly were, I never would have treated you that way. Polar almost coughed, trying to hide his reaction. General Gator looked away to stop himself from smiling. Kaenar remained expressionless. Before he could answer, something caught his attention. Farther down another palace corridor, a familiar figure appeared. Aarhiya. He walked gracefully with several palace maids following a respectful distance behind him. He seemed completely unaware that Kaenar was nearby. Kaenar's eyes instinctively followed him. For reasons he couldn't explain. His heart tightened again. He barely heard Sanraya continuing her explanation. So I truly hope your Majesty can understand. Kaenar interrupted politely. Lady Sanraya. She smiled hopefully. Yes. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to discuss what happened today. She nodded eagerly. Of course. But. His eyes remained fixed on Aarhiya. Not now. Before Sanraya could respond, Kaenar was already walking away. Your Majesty, she called after him in confusion. He didn't stop. He quickened his pace instead. Sanraya watched him disappear down the corridor. Completely bewildered. Where is he going? She followed his gaze. Then finally noticed Aarhiya walking in the distance. Her brows slowly furrowed. Aarhiya? She looked back toward the direction Kaenar had gone. Then toward Aarhiya again. A strange feeling settled in her chest. Meanwhile, the palace maid politely turned to Polar and General Gator. If you'll come with me, I'll show you to the manor. Polar looked toward Kaenar, who was already disappearing around the corner. Shouldn't we follow him? General Gator smiled knowingly. I think, he said quietly. His Majesty has something he wants to find out for himself. The maid couldn't help laughing softly. This way, gentlemen. As they continued toward the manor beside the Crown Prince's residence, Sanraya remained standing alone in the corridor. Watching the direction Kaenar had gone. The apology she had carefully rehearsed had barely mattered. And for the first time, she began to wonder if the mysterious Emperor of Umbraeth had come to Luminar for someone else entirely. Aarhiya walked quietly along the stone pathway that wound through the royal palace gardens. The afternoon breeze carried the sweet fragrance of blooming jasmine and golden lilies, while the gentle sound of flowing water echoed from nearby fountains. Behind him, 4 palace maids followed at a respectful distance, chatting softly among themselves so as not to disturb the prince. Although his expression remained calm, his thoughts were anything but. He still couldn't stop thinking about what Nello had told him, and about seeing Kaenar earlier in the meeting hall. His heart tightened just remembering the look they had shared across the hall. Suddenly, Prince Aarhiya. A deep, familiar voice called from behind him. Aarhiya froze. His heart skipped a beat. There was only one person whose voice could make him react like that. Slowly, he turned around. And there he was. Kaenar. The Emperor of Umbraeth was walking toward him with calm, confident strides, his dark robes swaying gently with each step. The afternoon sunlight seemed to frame him perfectly, making him appear even more imposing than before. For a brief second, Aarhiya forgot how to breathe. He's really coming over. His pulse quickened so much he was sure the maids behind him could hear it. Still, he forced himself to remain composed. A gentle smile appeared on his lips. "Your Majesty." Kaenar returned the smile, and somehow it made Aarhiya's heart beat even faster. "I'm glad to see you're looking much better." His voice carried genuine relief. "When I left the temple yesterday, I wasn't sure how quickly you'd recover." Aarhiya lowered his eyes politely. "Thanks to your kindness. I'm much better now." He smiled softly. "I've actually been hoping to thank you properly. You saved my life. If you hadn't been there." He paused before shaking his head. "I don't know if I'd still be alive." Kaenar studied him quietly. "Then I'm glad I happened to be there." As they spoke, Aarhiya kept his gaze lowered. No matter how hard he tried, he simply couldn't bring himself to look directly into Kaenar's eyes. He was afraid. Afraid that if he looked too long, his feelings would become obvious. Kaenar noticed. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. Instead of stepping back, he took another step closer. The distance between them grew noticeably smaller. Aarhiya's breath caught. He's too close. Instinctively, he took half a step backward. Behind them, the palace maids exchanged quick glances. One quietly covered her smile with her sleeve. Another gently nudged the maid beside her. The atmosphere between the two men had suddenly become strangely intimate. Even standing several feet away, they could practically feel the tension. Kaenar noticed Aarhiya's nervousness but didn't comment on it. Instead, he tilted his head slightly. "There's something I've been wondering." Aarhiya swallowed. "What is it?" Kaenar's expression became thoughtful. "Yesterday, when I caught you, you were unconscious." Aarhiya's fingers tightened around the sleeves of his robe. Kaenar continued. "But before you lost consciousness completely, you looked at me. And you said my name." Silence settled between them. Kaenar watched him carefully. "It sounded as though you already knew me." Aarhiya's heart nearly stopped. He remembers. His mind raced. What do I say? I can't tell him the truth. Not yet. Not like this. He forced out a nervous laugh. It must have been a coincidence. Kaenar remained silent. Aarhiya hurriedly continued. "I'm the oracle. I often receive strange visions and dreams. Perhaps I unknowingly saw your face before." He looked away. "Or maybe I simply heard someone mention your name without realizing it. I'm sorry if I confused you." Kaenar continued studying him for another moment. Aarhiya could feel the weight of that gaze. Then, Kaenar smiled. He finally stepped back, giving Aarhiya some breathing room. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pressure you." Aarhiya let out a quiet breath of relief. "It's all right." Kaenar looked toward the palace buildings. "I suppose things won't be easy while I'm here." Aarhiya blinked. "What do you mean?" Kaenar chuckled. "I don't think your father likes me very much." Aarhiya couldn't help smiling. "That's probably true." They both laughed quietly. Then Aarhiya looked around cautiously before lowering his voice. "I think it would be best if we kept our distance." Kaenar raised an eyebrow. "Oh. My father already distrusts Umbraeth. If we're seen spending too much time together, It may cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Kaenar nodded thoughtfully. I suppose you're right. Then his eyes sparkled with amusement. But he leaned forward just slightly. Sometimes it's thrilling to do something that's forbidden. Aarhiya stared at him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Their eyes remained locked together. It was as though time itself had slowed. The distant chatter of birds, the footsteps of servants, even the breeze. Everything seemed to disappear. Aarhiya was the first to look away. A faint blush spread across his cheeks. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps. He smiled shyly. Being friends wouldn't be such a terrible idea. Kaenar's smile immediately widened. As long as... Aarhiya quickly added. My father doesn't find out. Kaenar laughed softly. Our little secret. Aarhiya nodded. Our little secret. Kaenar extended his hand. Friends. Aarhiya looked at the offered hand for a second before placing his own in it. The moment their fingers touched, both of them froze. A strange warmth rushed through their hands. Like a tiny spark. It wasn't painful. It wasn't ordinary either. It felt familiar. Comforting. Almost as though something deep within them had quietly awakened. Their eyes widened simultaneously. They quickly let go. Neither spoke about what had just happened. But both of them had clearly felt it. Kaenar broke the awkward silence first. It seems we're heading in the same direction. Aarhiya smiled. Our residences are nearby. Then, Kaenar gestured toward the pathway. Shall we walk together? I'd like that. The two of them began walking side by side through the beautiful palace gardens. Behind them, the maid struggled not to smile too openly. They had never seen the crown prince look this flustered. Neither of them noticed how naturally they had fallen into step with one another. Eventually, they arrived at a peaceful lake. Its crystal-clear waters reflected the golden palace buildings surrounding it. On one side stood Aarhiya's elegant residence. On the opposite side stood the vacant manor that had just been assigned to Kaenar. A small stone bridge connected both properties. So, Aarhiya said softly. It seems we're neighbors. Kaenar looked around with amusement. I couldn't have asked for a better location. Aarhiya laughed quietly. I should head inside. The physicians will scold me if I stay out too long. Kaenar nodded. Get plenty of rest. I will. Aarhiya took a few steps toward his residence. Then suddenly stopped. He hesitated. The maids watched curiously. Slowly, he turned back around. Your Majesty. Kaenar looked up. Yes. Aarhiya smiled nervously. It was nice to see you and talk to you. Kaenar blinked in pleasant surprise. Then an unmistakably warm smile spread across his face. I feel the same. Relief immediately washed over Aarhiya's expression. With that, Aarhiya finally turned and walked toward his residence. The palace maids hurried after him, whispering excitedly the moment they were out of earshot. Kaenar remained standing beside the lake, watching until Aarhiya disappeared inside his manor. Only then did he realize. He was smiling. A genuine smile. The kind that came without effort. He shook his head slightly, almost amused with himself. I've only just met him. He murmured quietly. So why does it feel like I've known him forever? As soon as Aarhiya stepped into his chambers, the heavy wooden doors closed quietly behind him. The palace maids bowed before leaving him alone, knowing their prince needed time to rest. The moment the room fell silent, Aarhiya let out a long breath he hadn't realized he had been holding. Finally, he pressed a hand against his chest, feeling his heart still racing wildly. He slowly walked over to the window overlooking the palace gardens, then leaned both hands against the windowsill. His reflection stared back at him in the glass. A smile slowly spread across his face. "I can't believe it," he whispered to himself. His cheeks warmed as he replayed the conversation over and over in his mind. The way Kaenar had smiled at him. The way he had walked closer. The concern in his voice when he asked if he was feeling better. Even the handshake. Aarhiya instinctively looked down at his own hand. He gently rubbed his fingers together as though he could still feel the warmth of Kaenar's touch lingering. His heart fluttered again. Then he covered his face with both hands and laughed quietly to himself. "I was so nervous. I could barely look him in the eyes." He dropped his hands and smiled helplessly. "And he actually asked if we could be friends." Those words alone were enough to make his heart swell with happiness. For so long, he had dreamed about seeing Kaenar again. He had imagined countless reunions. Some joyful. Some heartbreaking. But never had he imagined Kaenar asking to become his friend. Even if Kaenar didn't recognize him. Even if Kaenar still believed Sanrea was the one he loved. Aarhiya felt grateful just to be able to stand beside him again. He walked over to the bed and sat down, hugging a pillow to his chest. A quiet laugh escaped him. "We're neighbors now." He could hardly believe his luck. The empty manor beside his residence. Of all the places in the palace, Kaenar had ended up there. That meant they would inevitably meet often. Perhaps during morning walks. Perhaps in the gardens. Perhaps over dinner. His smile widened even more. Then it slowly faded. A worried expression crossed his face. "I have to be careful." He hugged the pillow tighter. "If we keep meeting like this, I'm going to make a mistake." He sighed softly. "I love him so much. So how am I supposed to pretend that I don't?" His eyes drifted toward the window again. "I just hope I don't accidentally let my feelings show." He smiled to himself once more. Even so, for the first time, his heart felt light. No matter what happened next, Kaenar was finally close again. And that alone made him happier than he had been in a very long time. Meanwhile, Kaenar stepped into the spacious manor that had been prepared for him. The servants had already finished arranging everything. The residence was elegant without being overly extravagant. Polished wooden floors stretched across the large entrance hall. Beautiful paintings decorated the walls. Every room overlooked either the palace gardens or the peaceful lake that separated the manor from Aarhiya's residence. General Gator slowly turned in a circle, taking everything in. "Well," he said with an impressed whistle. "I have to admit, this place is incredible." He walked over to one of the carved windows and looked outside. The guest houses in Luminar are almost as luxurious as royal palaces. Receiving no reply, he glanced over his shoulder. Kaenar hadn't heard a word he'd said. Instead, he was standing near the window, staring absent-mindedly at the lake outside. His thoughts were somewhere else entirely. General Gator chuckled. "So?" Kaenar looked at him. "You aren't even listening to me, are you?" Kaenar blinked before giving an apologetic smile. "I heard some of it." General Gator folded his arms. "I doubt that." He walked over. "Where did you disappear to after we left the meeting hall?" Kaenar answered honestly. "I went to speak with Prince Aarhiya." General Gator nodded. "So? Did you get the answers you were looking for?" Kaenar slowly shook his head. "I asked him why he called my name yesterday. He insisted it was just a coincidence. And?" Kaenar frowned thoughtfully. "I don't know." He looked back toward the window. "I find that difficult to believe." General Gator raised an eyebrow. You think he's lying? I'm not sure. Kaenar sighed. But every time I'm around him. He searched for the right words. It feels strange. Like. I've met him before. General Gator looked genuinely puzzled. You've never been to Luminar. I know. And yet. Kaenar rubbed his forehead. I can't explain it. He feels. He paused again. Familiar. There was a brief silence. Then General Gator sighed. Your Majesty. Kaenar looked at him. I think you're thinking about the wrong person. Kaenar frowned. What do you mean? General Gator smiled knowingly. You didn't come all the way to Luminar because of Prince Aarhiya. You came here for Sunraya. He spoke gently, but his words carried weight. She's the woman you've been waiting for. The woman you love. The one you were about to marry. The woman you crossed the cursed barrier to find. He placed a hand on Kaenar's shoulder. I understand that you're curious about the prince. But don't let that curiosity distract you from why you're really here. The king already dislikes you. And Prince Aarhiya is his son. The closer you become to him, the more complicated things will get. Kaenar remained silent. General Gator continued. You should focus on Sunraya. Talk to her. Find out why she left and why she acted so coldly. That's your priority. Kaenar looked down for a long moment. Then slowly nodded. You're right. His voice was quieter now. I've allowed myself to get distracted. He let out a slow breath. I need to remember why I came here. General Gator smiled. Exactly. Just then, Kaenar glanced around the manor. His brows knitted together. Where's Polar? General Gator looked toward the entrance. He left a little while ago. Kaenar frowned. Did he say where he was going? He only said. General Gator shrugged. That he wanted to take a walk. Kaenar nodded thoughtfully. For some reason, a strange feeling settled in his chest. Almost as though something important was about to happen. Meanwhile, the palace grounds had begun to quieten as evening settled over Luminar. The golden rays of the setting sun bathed the palace courtyards in a warm glow, while servants hurried about lighting ornate lanterns that would soon illuminate every pathway. Nello walked briskly along one of the stone corridors leading toward Aarhiya's manor. His mind was still occupied with everything that had happened that day. Kaenar's arrival. Aarhiya's reaction. And the uneasy feeling that destiny had finally begun moving again. Just as he rounded the corner of a quiet courtyard, a hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. Before he could react, he was pulled behind a nearby pavilion, hidden from anyone passing by. Nello's heart nearly leapt out of his chest. Who? He spun around, ready to defend himself. Then his eyes widened. Polar. For a moment, he simply stared. He genuinely wondered if he was imagining things. Standing right in front of him was the very person he had believed he might never see again. Polar smiled warmly. Before Nello could even speak, Polar stepped forward and wrapped both arms tightly around him. Nello, thank goodness I found you. I searched the entire palace for you. His voice was soft, almost relieved. I missed you so much. Nello froze. His mind completely went blank. Slowly, almost hesitantly, he returned the embrace. His arms tightened around Polar as though reassuring himself that this wasn't another dream. I can't believe it. He murmured. I thought I'd never see you again. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. They simply stood there, holding one another. Eventually, Polar pulled back just enough to look at Nello's face. He smiled. You haven't changed. Nello laughed softly. Neither have you. Then he shook his head in disbelief. How are you here? I still can't understand it. How did you leave Umbraeth? Polar let out a tired sigh. It's a very long story. Nello folded his arms. I have time. Polar couldn't help smiling. Of course you do. He leaned casually against one of the stone pillars before explaining everything. He told Nello how Kaenar had discovered that he was the one who helped Aarhiya escape Umbraeth. How furious the Emperor had been. Honestly. Polar admitted with an awkward laugh. I've never seen him that angry before. Nello winced. I can imagine. Polar nodded. He gave me two choices. Find a way to cross the cursed barrier during the day. Or prepare to lose my head. Nello's eyes widened. He actually said that. Polar sighed dramatically. He wasn't joking either. I searched everywhere. I studied every ancient record. I tried every magical theory I knew. But nothing worked. He smiled faintly. Then I went to Whitey. At the mention of her name, Nello looked surprised. The old seer. Polar nodded. She hadn't lost everything. She found a way. He explained how Whitey had blessed Aarhiya's blood, creating a potion that allowed 3 people to cross the barrier safely. But only for 3 months. After that, he smiled bitterly. The curse will catch up with us. Nello's expression immediately became serious. So, you really only have 3 months? Polar nodded. 3 months. No more. Silence settled between them. Finally, Nello sighed. Then, what about Kaenar and Aarhiya? His voice became softer. It's painful watching them like this. They're standing right in front of each other. And yet Kaenar has no idea. Polar lowered his head. I know. His expression filled with guilt. We made a terrible mistake. Nello looked at him quietly. Polar continued. We thought we were protecting Kaenar. We thought separating them was the right decision. He let out a slow breath. But we only made things worse. He looked toward Aarhiya's residence in the distance. This time, we're going to fix it. Nello tilted his head. How? We'll help Kaenar discover the truth. Polar answered without hesitation. He deserves to know that Aarhiya was the person he fell in love with all along. And we can't let the real Sanrea manipulate him. Nello nodded slowly. That won't be easy. I know. Polar smiled sadly. But it's the least I can do. He looked down at his hands. Maybe once I do that. And if Kaenar eventually learns that I knew the truth. And that I helped keep it from him. He'll forgive me someday. Nello didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around cautiously before lowering his voice. You know, King Aurelius will never allow it. The moment he realizes what's happening, he'll do everything he can to separate them. Polar shrugged. I expected that. He smiled confidently. But this isn't about King Aurelius. It's about Kaenar. And Aarhiya. They deserve the chance to choose each other. No matter what anyone else wants. Nello looked at Polar for a long moment. Then smiled softly. You've changed. Polar laughed. Maybe. Before Nello could reply, Polar suddenly stepped closer. Close enough that Nello instinctively looked up at him. There is something else. Polar said quietly. Nello blinked. What? Polar's smile became gentler. Before you left Umbraeth, you kissed me. Nello's face instantly turned bright red. Polar chuckled. You probably thought I'd forgotten. He slowly shook his head. I never did. Not once. Nello immediately looked away, suddenly finding the palace floor incredibly interesting. His ears were burning. That. He cleared his throat awkwardly. That doesn't matter right now. Polar smiled teasingly. Oh. Nello nodded much too quickly. We have far more important things to worry about. Kaenar. Aarhiya. He refused to meet Polar's eyes. Polar couldn't stop smiling. So we're avoiding the subject. Nello's blush deepened. Wheel. He fidgeted with the sleeve of his robe before finally mumbling. We'll talk about it later. Polar's smile softened. I'll hold you to that. Nello looked at him for only a brief second before quickly turning away again. I should go. If I'm gone much longer, Aarhiya will start wondering where I disappeared to. He took a few hurried steps away. Nello quickly hurried off across the courtyard, trying, and failing, to hide the smile spreading across his face. Polar watched him go. A warm laugh escaped him. So. He murmured to himself. He's still just as adorable. He remained standing there for another moment, watching until Nello disappeared around the corner. Then, still smiling to himself, he finally turned and headed back toward the manor, feeling, for the first time in a very long while, that perhaps fate was finally giving all of them a second chance. As night settled over Luminar Palace, the once lively corridors gradually fell silent. Most of the guests had retired to their residences after the long day, while palace guards quietly patrolled the halls beneath the glow of golden lanterns. But not everyone had gone to rest. Hidden deep within a secluded wing of the palace, far away from curious ears, a lone figure walked through a dimly lit corridor. His footsteps were almost completely silent. He wore a dark hood that concealed most of his face, making him appear like nothing more than a shadow drifting through the palace. He stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. Without knocking, he pushed it open. Inside the room sat King Aurelius. Beside him stood attendant Louis. The hooded man entered without making a sound before dropping to one knee. He lowered his head respectfully. You summoned me, Your Majesty. King Aurelius studied the man carefully. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he looked toward Louis. So? He asked quietly. This is the man you spoke of? A slow smile spread across Louis's face. Indeed, Your Majesty. This. He said with obvious satisfaction. Is she CA? He spoke the name with admiration. In the underworld, people rarely speak his name aloud. Those who do, he chuckled softly, usually don't live very long afterward. King Aurelius raised an eyebrow. Louis continued. He's known as the Silent Assassin. A killer who leaves no witnesses. No unnecessary bloodshed. No evidence. No mistakes. They say he moves through the shadows like a ghost. You never know he was there. Until someone is already dead. Louis folded his hands behind his back. It wasn't easy finding him. In fact, it took me months to make contact. But after considerable effort, he smiled proudly. I managed to bring him here. King Aurelius looked back at the kneeling assassin. So, he said calmly. Are the stories true? Chicie slowly lifted his head. Only now did the candlelight reveal part of his face. His expression was emotionless. Cold. His eyes carried no warmth whatsoever. They are. His voice was quiet. Steady. I have never failed a mission. The confidence in his tone wasn't arrogance. It was simply fact. King Aurelius leaned back slightly in his chair. I like confidence. He rose from his seat and slowly walked toward Chicie. I have a task for you. Chicie remained perfectly still. I'm listening. Aurelius clasped his hands behind his back. In 2 days. The Cross-Kingdom Festival begins. As you know, competitors from every magical kingdom will participate. Shisia nodded once. I want you to enter the competition. The assassin looked up slightly. As a contestant? Exactly. Aurelius' eyes darkened. But that isn't your real mission. He stepped closer. Your true target is Emperor Kaenar of Umbraeth. The room fell silent. I want him dead. Shisia's expression didn't change. Aurelius continued. However, it must not look like murder. It must appear to be nothing more than a tragic accident. A fatal mistake during the competition. He stared directly into Shisia's eyes. No one must ever suspect Luminar. No one must trace it back to me. Shisia nodded once more. I understand. King Aurelius's voice became icy. And if you fail? He let the words linger. You will not leave this palace alive. The threat echoed through the room. Shisia didn't even blink. Instead, a faint smile appeared on his lips. I have no intention of failing. King Aurelius watched him for another moment before giving a satisfied nod. Good. He turned toward Louis. See that he's rewarded. Louis bowed respectfully. Of course, your majesty. Without another word, King Aurelius left the room. The heavy doors closed behind him. Silence returned. For several moments. Neither man spoke. Then, Louis slowly began to laugh. A quiet, sinister laugh. Shisia looked at him. You seem pleased. Louis' smile widened. Oh, I am. He walked toward the window overlooking the dark palace grounds. You see. My king only gave you one target. He slowly turned back around. But personally, I wouldn't mind. He paused deliberately. If another unfortunate accident happened during the festival. Shisia remained expressionless. Louis' smile became even darker. If Prince Aarhiya were to. He shrugged casually. Lose his life as well. That wouldn't be such a terrible outcome. The room grew eerily quiet. Shisia stared at him for several seconds. Then, a slow smile appeared on the assassin's face. It wasn't warm. It was the smile of someone who had long ago become comfortable with death. I understand. The palace remained peaceful beneath the moonlight. Completely unaware that hidden within its walls, a deadly conspiracy had just begun. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel for more episodes.